0-2 pitch.
Did you find something strangely common in this? In today's video, we're going to look at top 5 reasons as to how your breathing techniques can actually speed up your fitness goals. Hi and welcome. This is Biju Balan, a functional fitness trainer certified from Indian Institute of Sports Medicine and a fitness enthusiast and ex-professional cricketer. I run a fitness community group named Retrofit, which helps people in their mid-ages to regain and retrofit their lost fitness and carry out their life routines in a much more effective way. To begin with, it's a no-brainer that you need oxygen to live, to walk, to eat, to watch TV, to pretty much do everything in your life. To survive, you need oxygen. And if you're doing a physical activity, you actually probably need more oxygen. The more muscles that you move, the more amount of oxygen that you need. And obviously you breathe in oxygen from the air. So depending on your activity level, you need so much of oxygen to be intaken so that your oxygen is converted into fuel, transported to the cells and to all corners of your body and reaches out to the muscles and help you do that particular activity. But most of the time, our breathing happens very passive way. We don't even realize how the breathing happens within us. It just happens so automatically that we really don't pay attention to it. But if you can focus and pay attention to your breathing and deliver the right amount of oxygen to the right targeted muscle groups at the right time, then you can actually work much more effectively. But most often we don't even realize that how the breathing happens. And small tweaks in your breathing techniques can actually alter your performance, improve your performance and speed up your results. Now imagine lungs as a balloon inbuilt in your chest. The more air that you intake, the balloon starts expanding, and when you exhale, the balloon starts shrinking and you're actually throwing out your air. And it's pretty common that all of us are not fully inhaling to the volume of your lungs. There is always some amount of depth space which is fairly unused, and some amount of air is always left in the lungs. So what you're actually consuming and inhaling and exhaling is only a remaining part of your lung capacity. And even in that space, if you're actually doing a very shallow level, then you are not even filling that capacity. You're only half filling it or filling it very, very little. Now, because the breathing is so natural and so passive and it's so automatic that we don't end up realizing how much of lung capacity we are actually using. The more and more inhalation, deep inhalation you can do, the lungs can expand to a maximum and you can consume as much as amount of volume of air, oxygen, in just one inhalation itself. Now, this is something that we don't really realize in a practical life, and we end up doing something called as a shallow breathing. Shallow breathing is where we don't really expand as much as possible and use maximum capacity of intake, but rather take very only little amount of oxygen with a very shallow level of breathing. Due to this, the amount of energy, fuel that we need to move our muscles to do a particular physical activity may not be good enough from the shallow breathing. So heart compensates it by actually increasing the heart rate and thereby making you to breathe much more faster in a very shallow level. But rather, if you can actually focus on deep breathing, inhale more amount of volume of oxygen within one inhalation itself, this can be avoided. So this is where the concept of diaphragmatic breathing technique comes into play. Now, imagine again the balloon. The balloon has to expand, but it has its own limitation of how far it can expand. Now, it cannot expand horizontally because there is a rib cage around your lungs which is actually stopping it, restricting it. Now, rib cage being a bone structure, it can't really expand to a very big level. It can only do to a very small minimal level. So the only way the lungs can actually expand and increase its capacity is thereby expanding vertically. So there is a thin muscle named diaphragm, which separates your thoracic cavity, which is your chest and lungs, with your abdominal cavity. Now every time you inhale, ideally speaking, your diaphragm is supposed to go down, and when you exhale, the diaphragm will come up. The more and more the diaphragm is going down is when you're actually opening up your lungs and increasing the capacity of your lungs. Now, to get a sign of this is to look at your stomach, to look at your belly, how this is operating at the time of your breathing. So when you're breathing in, your lungs is expanding, pushing your diaphragm muscles below the thoracic cavity, that is towards your abdominal cavity. So obviously your stomach is supposed to be coming out. So thereby your chest is opening up, lungs is opening up, the diaphragm is moving down. You're getting a much more bigger space here to store and intake more amount of air. And when you do it the opposite way, which is the exhalation, the diaphragm muscles are going to come up, squeezing the lungs and pushing all the air, as much as air as out as possible in terms of carbon dioxide. Thereby, for your next inhalation, it is much more ready to intake much more fresh air in a much more higher capacity level. But in our real life, in our practical life, more often most of us at least don't realize that we're not doing diaphragmatic technique. That is, thereby we're not really pushing down the diaphragm and increasing our lung capacity. There is also a common mistake that most often people do, is that when they breathe in, they raise their shoulder, raise their chest and pull in their tummy. The stomach goes inside when they're actually breathing in. So when you do that, unconsciously, the diaphragm is still not going down. So thereby your lung capacity is actually not increasing, rather it is actually decreasing. And when they breathe out, they actually put their stomach out and then come to a relaxed position. But that's actually a wrong technique. Ideally speaking, the right technique should have been where when you inhale, the stomach should come out with a deep breathing though, and when you're exhaling, your stomach should actually go inside. You can test yourself by placing your arms on your stomach, either standing or lying down, and observe when you're actually inhaling whether your hands are moving up along with your belly, and when you're exhaling, whether your hands are moving inside along with your belly. You can notice it. If this is not happening, probably you need to pay attention for a couple of days, make a conscious effort to do that within yourself, and then it automatically becomes a habit, and then you get used to it, and without you knowing, unconsciously you will start doing a diaphragmatic technique. Now this is one of the strong foundation of yogic science. Yoga is built upon a lot of yogasanas, breathing techniques, pranayama, so much of kriyas and the like. And all of it ensures that you are actually focusing on your breathing, that to very deep level of breathing, so that it actually cleanses your body, cleanses your mind, helps you relax, brings down your stress, brings down your blood pressure, also gives you ample amount of volume of oxygen in just one inhalation and one exhalation itself. Thereby, indirectly, your diaphragmatic breathing technique is automatically inbuilt within your yoga practices. Prana, as they say in yoga, it's nothing but life, or the energy that you're actually intaking. So the more amount of prana energy or the oxygen that you're actually intaking, it is going to do all the more good. And even in modern sciences, it is believed that the fat loss or the weight loss that we are referring to is a process where you are shedding the carbon which you have intaken from the carbohydrates from your body, and thereby resulting in a weight loss. And the key pathway to release the carbon from your body is through your lungs in terms of your exhalation. So the more amount of exhalation you do, the more amount of fresh oxygen you're intaking would help improvise your speeden up your fat loss, and thereby it will also help you to do your weight loss much more faster. Now let's look at how breathing techniques are interconnected with the exercise physiology. One of the common mistakes that most of us would do is when we're actually doing some physical exercises, we pay too much of attention to the technique, to the form, to the shape, but then keep forgetting as to how we should be focusing on the breathing technique. For example, if you're doing a push-up, squat, or a deadlift, or a biceps curl, whatever, we pay attention to that particular technique and losing the sight of how we are actually breathing. One of the most common mistakes is that people tend to hold their breath. When they hold their breath, you're actually not delivering oxygen to the muscle group that is actually working there. Now imagine a dead body. The moment you don't give oxygen to the muscles, when you're dead basically, the muscle obviously gets stiffened up, right? You don't want that happen during your workout. So you want to actually give fuel, actually energize it to work much more effectively, and you can focus on progressing from there. Now, so do not hold your breath in any form of exercises except for one or two. Now, the right technique when you're doing exercises is to exhale when you're actually exerting pressure or going against the gravity, or whenever there's a concentric force applied on your muscles. For example, when you're actually squatting and coming up, you're actually applying force through your legs to lift your body up. Or when you're doing a push-up, you're actually pushing it away, applying force on your arms onto the floor so that your body can actually come up. When you're doing a biceps curl, you're actually applying force here to pull this up against the gravity towards you. So there is a concentric force applied on your muscles. You're pulling the weight against the gravity, and that's the time where actually you have to exhale. And on the opposite direction, when you're actually going towards the gravity, with the gravity, when you're in the squat, when you're actually going down, or in the push-ups when you're actually going down, or in the biceps curl when you're actually dropping the weight down, you don't need to do anything because there is a weight which is naturally going towards the floor because of the gravity reasons, and that's the time you can actually save time by inhaling and utilize that oxygen process to exert pressure and exhale when the time actually you are doing a concentric force application, which is actually you're lifting the weight. And this is why you would have heard from trainers and coaches to make you tighten up your core, tuck in your tummy when you're actually lifting a weight. That's because that's when you're actually creating a force and also using exhalation as a process to exert force on your muscle group. And when you do a deep breathing with a deep exhalation, it's quite natural and quite normal to have the core automatically contract without you doing very consciously. This will automatically happen. So the moment the core contracts, as the gym coaches and trainers advise to contract your core, you will naturally start generating force which is transferred to your targeted muscle group. If it is squat, to your legs; if it is your push-ups, to your chest; or if it is your biceps curl, to your biceps. Now, how this is beneficial to you? Number one, by way of doing the right breathing technique while you're working out, you can actually process, store and deliver the oxygen as in a fuel to your targeted muscle group, thereby helping your muscles to work much more effectively, which means that you can actually load a little more. You can actually go in for a little more intense activity and load the muscle group much more effectively. This will lead into faster progress and faster result. And with the deep breathing technique, when you're actually doing a deep exhalation, it's quite natural that the core automatically tightens up because you're actually doing a very deep level of exhalation. So when the core tightens up, this acts as a protective belt for your spine all around, which means you avoid any sort of injury happening to your spine. It protects your spine thereby. And when you do a deep exhalation while exerting force, naturally the core tends to contract and tighten up, and this acts as a protective belt for your spine and avoiding any sort of injury to your spinal cord. Also strengthens up your core region. The next advantage with the right breathing technique is that this will help you to process more oxygen, store and deliver it as in fuel or energy to your targeted muscle groups that are actually working, and thereby helping you to avoid any sort of muscle cramps, delays the fatigue, delays your muscle failures, thereby helps you to progress much more faster, helps you to work out for a much more slightly longer period of time. And with the right breathing technique, the core contraction naturally happens, and when you're consciously doing a core contraction, which is tightening up your core when you're actually lifting weight, also helps you to generate force from your navel or slightly below the navel region. This is a nerve center which actually acts as an energy center. This is also explained in the yoga sciences, the place where one of the chakras is located. Now when this happens, and when you're exhaling and tightening up your core, there is a huge amount of energy being processed and generated, force is being generated from the navel region to your targeted muscle group, which is excessively generating force to lift a weight or lift yourself up. This is the reason why you would have seen Monica Seles or Rafael Nadal shouting or screaming every time they're hitting the ball. Some of the bowlers tend to shout when they're actually bowling. You would have seen that in karate, that when they're actually punching, they exhale so hard with the tightened up core that they generate so much of force through their hand, because there is a deep level of core contraction, there's a deep level of exhalation happens with the extreme force. Also in many other sports, like we would have seen when people are actually lifting weights in the Olympic weightlifting competition, or a boat race or rowing race, that the reason why you're actually making a noise or grunting with a very strong exhalation actually tightens up your core, generates a force from here to the targeted muscle group, thereby your performance is much more better. There are researches which says that there is an improvement of 4 to 10% of the force applied when you do not grunt otherwise. Okay, whether it is legally allowed, whether it is ethically allowed, whether you're annoying an opponent while you're playing with a grunt every time you're let's say batting, or you're doing a badminton overhead smash or whatever, we're not going into that debate. But then, is it helping you? Yes, psychologically there is an adrenaline rush that's happening. There is a force that is being generated because of the fast and forceful exhalation with the core contraction happening, which is probably the reason why Rafael Nadal is able to hit so ferociously, or Monica Seles was so successful, or even Serena Williams was so successful. And the last reason being that by not holding your breath, you are actually avoiding building up of a high blood pressure and a sudden drop in blood pressure when you're releasing it and start breathing again. Now this would avoid the variations in your blood pressure, keep yourself in a steady state. Even if you're running, jogging or cycling, if you can maintain a rhythmic breathing pattern, which is inhale for 2 to 3 to 4 steps, and then exhale for the next 2 or 3 or 4 steps, making it a very rhythmic and uniform pattern, you can actually delay your fatigue level, which means you can actually go to much more farther distance with the same amount of stamina. Like I said, this will also avoid building up of a high blood pressure or a sudden drop in blood pressure. Thereby you can actually avoid getting a headache after the exercises are done, which your workout is over. Some of us always have this tendency of getting a very bad headache because most often we are holding up our breath while you're actually exerting force and doing some sort of a workout. This is one of the reasons for that. And by not holding your breath, you are avoiding the muscle getting stiffness. Like I said, a dead body is muscles are becoming stiff because there is no oxygen flow towards it. So thereby, when you are holding your breath and doing a particular workout, you're not really allowing a full range of motion because you're not giving adequate energy in the form of oxygen to your muscle group. Alright, so I hope this video gave you a little bit of insights of how a right breathing technique in the exercise physiology would help you speed up your results, whatever your goal might be, whether to build muscle or to lose fat or to lose weight or to improve your endurance or whatever. I'm sure this would help you to go a little more extra far away distance. Now remember, this is not just for your exercise physiology alone. Even in your routine life, in your practical life, you can actually start thinking as to wherever you are exerting pressure, applying force, you can start exhaling there and inhale on the opposite direction. For example, during the lockdown period, if you are lifting a bubble tap can of 25 liters or 30 liters capacity from the floor, lifting the weight up, you are mimicking a squat action. Or you are lifting a heavyweight gas cylinder up the floor, you are mimicking a deadlift. Or if you are pushing your sofa away to clean up the floor, you are mimicking a push-up over there. So there is a lot of real life examples where you're actually simulating the exercises that you're doing in a controlled gym environment. So start thinking this as to even in those routine lives, wherever you're doing that kind of force exertion, remember to exhale whenever you're doing that, so that you don't get into injury and you get all the benefits that we have just discussed over this video. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe, and catch you in the next video. Take care, stay fit and stay safe.